There's a very logical reason behind Disney and Pixar stories failing, while some of them have become iconic and a big part of pop culture. Why is it that some of the stories Disney makes are so poorly received by both audiences and critics, while others make you fall in love with the characters, narrative, and the great storytelling behind them? Considering that Disney and Pixar have been struggling with storytelling even for the first installment, it's a huge step to not only make a sequel that outshines the first one, but also makes such a beautiful emotional impact. I cannot express how much I loved and enjoyed Inside Out 2. As someone who struggles with anxiety myself, this movie was just like magic for me. It gave me chills, made an emotional impact on me, but that's not the case for most of their recent works. Disney's Strange World was a massive step for the company, featuring the very first teenage gay character, depicted in less subtle ways than before. He was out and had a crush on another male character, but that's about the only good thing I can name about the movie, which led to a very bad score among fans. We have other examples of flat storytelling that doesn't have any emotional connection to the audience. But on the other side of the company, we have animations like Soul, Inside Out, and Inside Out 2, which have become massive hits for the company. Now, the question is, what do all these stories have within their core that makes them different from the other works of the company? The story of Inside Out focuses on Riley and her journey of growth as a person, but I'll promise you that if it was just telling the story of some emotions in a human mind, it wouldn't have had the impact we now see. Instead, the story makes the best of each and every writing tool to make you feel the emotions just as Riley is experiencing them. Stories have different layers, and in my belief, the reason Inside Out 2 is such a great story is that it delivers on each and every layer of storytelling, while animations like Strange World get stuck in the first one. In the first layer of stories, we have external conflict, which is something we can see in A Strange World from the start. Searcher and his father have an external conflict over what to do with their lives, leading to the father to leave his son. The same thing is also visible in Inside Out 2. On the external level, Riley wants to make new friends, and the fear of being alone is too much for her. At the same time, her old friends seem hurt by the fact that Riley isn't spending time with them. To talk about the shortcomings of the company, stories like Finding Dory have the external level of conflict, and it is very fun to see the favorite characters after a few years, but considering that there was no internal struggle whatsoever, it couldn't deliver the greatness of the first movie. But the beauty of Inside Out is that the next layer of storytelling, which is 90% of the times invisible in the actual visuals, is shown and is a big part of the story. The next layer of stories is internal conflict, which is often a hidden layer, but Inside Out 2 is a very beautiful exception. The internal conflict is a great part of the story, but it goes beyond a simple internal conflict. Most of the times, the writers don't bother to introduce the characters to us in the sequels because they think we now know them and we don't need an introduction. But the question is, if there's no difference from the end of the last movie to the beginning of the second one, why do we need any sequels at all? That's where the introduction comes in handy. Each and every single story needs a character introduction, not only to introduce new challenges, but to eventually lead to the emotional growth. And that's exactly what happened with Finding Dory. We knew Dory, Nemo, and Marlene, so why bother to make actual internal struggles like the first one? And that's where the writers lose their audience on the emotional level. In Anatomy of the Story, John Truby introduces a character structure for creating great internal conflict, which will lead us to the third layer of stories, moral conflict. And that's why Inside Out 2 can be a sequel that's even better than the first movie. The character structure, which can be used in any kind of story, needs at least 4 characters, but they can certainly be more than one. In this structure, we need 2 opposite notions, which will become the moral argument of the story. In the case of Inside Out 2, we have the notion that being happy equals happiness and fulfillment. And on the other side, we have the fact that staying calm means you will fail, and you have to live in a never-ending worry. Then we need 4 characters, each showing a good side and the bad side of each notion. Joy will be the positive side of the first notion, and anxiety will be the negative side of the other one. Then we'll have fear and sadness showing possible sides of the second notion. Finally, Riley's struggles with her team, which are often results of Joy's decision to be positive all the time, will show the bad side of that. Then the interactions between each character will create internal conflict. But the beauty of Inside Out 2 goes beyond that because of how resonant the theme is with each and every person. The movie doesn't dictate one notion to you as Disney has tried to do in the last decade, but instead it gives both notions the same level of resolution. By giving both of them the same level, it shows the importance of balance in our lives. The climax of Inside Out 2 was absolutely heartbreaking. Even though on the surface level Riley was having a panic attack, inside her mind she was taken over by anxiety and flooded with negative energy. Joy's effort to make Riley's life all bubbly and fun didn't work out. We need to have those emotions all together to shape a better sense of self. And they should have done the same thing with Ralph Breaks the Internet, but the story remained on the surface level. None of the characters went through any meaningful change. Sure, it used many nostalgic baits, it had a fun concept diving in the internet, and I love to see Disney's princesses making a cameo on the movie, but I also wanted to see growth for at least one of the characters, and while the external conflicts were not that bad, the internal conflicts were non-existent. And even if little conflict existed, it didn't create a meaningful theme. But there's another thing I absolutely love about Inside Out 2, and that's the best use of world building, which is to help the moral themes and questions of the story to show themselves. I'm also working on another video about world building, so make sure to subscribe if you want to watch my future videos. World building isn't some sparkly thing to add shine to your story. If done right, it can support the story in the best possible way, making great obstacles at the times of need for good conflict and making the themes of the story shine through the narrative. Inside Out 2, like the first movie, used every single corner of its world building to its benefit, sometimes for a little bit of comedy.
We are suppressed emotions!
And sometimes to express the moral themes they were pursuing. But at the end of the day, the world building helps to tell the beautiful tale of Riley and her emotions. For an example of poor use of world building, I can name Strange World again. Strange World had, as it was named, a very strange world building. And after I finished watching it, I could feel like there was a potentially good story, but unfortunately, the world building and the plot of the story were two completely separate things in the story. Disney's Onward also had unrelated world building. It had some aspects that were related to the story, but it didn't play that good of a part in the story either. Same thing goes for Pixar's Elemental, which had a very visually pleasing world building, but the rules of the story didn't make any sense and didn't help the characters' growth in a meaningful way. They actually had to break a few of the world building setup in the end to make the couple work and be able to have physical interactions with each other. At the end, I want to thank the Disney gods for not writing a message that's shoved in my face and leaving room for subtlety, because having different points of views in the story is a very important element. The climax is like the author saying that they believe this is the best kind of resolution to this moral conflict, which was something I myself was suggesting from the moment I saw the conflict between joy and anxiety being shaped. I also love the fact that Joy wasn't in charge anymore, and it was Riley who was starting to learn how to control her emotions and handle the situations to channel the emotion she needs at times. And that's why I make my case of saying the second movie is even better than the first one. In my belief, Inside Out 1 was the story of human emotions shown through a young child that's also going through change. But the second movie made a better job at making Riley the actual central character and introducing a very deep concept, which is Riley's sense of self. It also shows the complexity of growth as we grow up in life. The combo of both of the movies makes a very logical statement. When we're younger, we're in less control, but we gain more control over our lives as we grow older. So, before you attack me in the comment section, I have to say that the first movie is absolutely great. I just think that the second one might be kind of better. And that's just one person's opinion. At the end of the day, Inside Out 2 is such a great story. Whether you're someone who's experiencing the same things as Riley, or you're older and look back at things that resonate with that time in your life, or even right now you might have the same struggles with your anxiety as Riley did. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.